Hysteria! It's not just an amazing album by Def Leppard. By the way, that album turned 30 years old last year. We hear the word hysteria and we think of going a little crazy, maybe a little paranoid, a little out of control. That's when a person is hysterical. If a joke is hysterical, that just means it's really funny. Although technically it means that it's so funny that you lose your mind because you went hysterical. But the origin of the word hysteria comes from the word hystera, the Greek word for uterus. And this is why removing a uterus is called a hysterectomy. Now, if that connection is weird to you, that's because in the Victorian days, hysteria was something that was only applied to women. And the treatment for it was interesting. Let's put it this way. It's why the vibrator was invented. So it's 2018, and we're still dealing with gender issues in this society. And it's not just about equal pay and SJW type stuff. The way we experience the world, the differences between men and women, is deep-rooted stuff. There was a study that was conducted that I thought was really interesting. It was basically saying that from the age of only just a few days old, we start treating babies differently according to their gender. Babies have a natural instinctual grab reflex. If you put something in their hand, they naturally grab it. So a lot of times when we're playing with little babies, we'll, put our finger out, they'll grab our finger. And there was a study that was shown that said that we treat boys and girls differently in that moment. A lot of times if a boy grabs your finger, people will start to pull and kind of test the little boy's strength, but they don't really do that with the girl. And this is just sort of an unconscious thing. Nobody's thinking about gender issues when they do that. It's just something that we do. It's very unconscious, and it's just the first example of what we do when they're only a few days old that kind of continues throughout a person's life. So it's fair to say that there's still a ways for us to go, but it's also good for us to look back and see just how far we've come. The Victorian era was weird in a lot of ways. We were just entering the industrial age, science and medicine had come a long way, but there was still a lot we didn't understand. So there were all kinds of weird medical treatments that made sense based on their knowledge of the day, but they make absolutely no sense to us now. They were just smart enough to be dangerous. And one of those things was the idea of female hysteria. Hysteria is one of those words we don't really use anymore. It's kind of fallen out of favor, but back in the day it was used to describe pretty much anything. It was just kind of a way of categorizing female instability. It was used as a diagnosis for everything from epileptic fits to fevers to coarse language. It was the Victorian era version of bitches be trippin'. But this isn't a purely Victorian assumption. This goes all the way back to ancient Greece. A physician named Horatius actually described the uterus as an animal within an animal that needed to be satiated or else it would strangle the woman from within. And how did you control this animal? By applying sweet-smelling oils to the genital area, vigorously. In the Middle Ages, they attributed hysteria to demonic possession because of course they did, and they thought that women were more susceptible to demonic possession because the vagina was an entry point for demons. Because of course it was. And the only way to release this demon was pelvic manipulation by a midwife. By the Victorian era, they had let go of the whole demonic thing and decided that hysteria was the result of societal pressures on the frail and dainty women of the day, I do declare. In fact, fainting was a common thing amongst women of the day, so much so that well-off homes would have a fainting room set aside just so that the woman could go in and, compose herself on a settee. And it's still debated exactly what the fainting was about, whether it was the tight corsets that restricted their breathing. Some suspected it actually had to do with the fact that lead and arsenic was used in makeup back then. Seriously, the Victorian era was a nightmare. Especially if you were a doctor, because these fainting women suffering from hysteria only had one treatment. And I think we figured out by now what that was. Doctors of the Victorian day spent so much time driving around to women's homes and getting them off that they started complaining about wrist pain and hand cramps. They were basically getting carpal tunnel from this. This got so bad that they got as creative as a stoner without a bong and started creating devices so that they wouldn't have to use their hands to do it. Everything from a water cannon to a steam-powered Sybian that the women could just kind of sit on. As homes started becoming electrified, appliances started becoming electrified as well. And some of the first appliances were all geared toward women because the women folk were the ones that were, sitting around the house doing chores all day long. In fact, the very first electrical appliance was a sewing machine. The fifth electrical appliance ever created was a vibrator. Think about all the electrical appliances we use today. The vibrator was made before almost all of them. According to author Rachel Maines, it preceded the electric vacuum cleaner by some 9 years, the electric iron by 10, and the electric frying pan by more than a decade, possibly reflecting consumer priorities. By the way, none of this was considered sexual. Doctors of the day didn't think that women could have an orgasm without penetration, so they didn't even call this an orgasm, they called it a hysterical paroxysm. In fact, tampons were more controversial back then because of the penetration issue. So the idea of roving doctors traveling house to house, pleasuring women right in front of their husbands sounds insane today. It was a perfectly normal thing back then. Which is amazing to me. The Victorian era was so chaste and so, demure, and the women couldn't show their ankles and that kind of thing. And yet the doctors were basically glorified gigolos. Damn, Victorians, you crazy. But I guess every era has their social norms that later on look crazy. I mean, just look at the fashion that was going on when Def Leppard's Hysteria came out. So what thing today do you think we'll think was crazy in 50 years? Talk about it in the comments. So thanks for watching. I hope you found that at least a little bit interesting, maybe a little titillating. But real quick before I go, I haven't talked about this on the channel in a while, but if you get canker sores and mouth ulcers, that's a very painful condition. People with recurring aphthostomatitis, or people who get them more than once a month, I do have a product that I sell called Canker Boy. It's on cankerboy.com, where it's a daily pill. You get a 2-month supply. You can do the first round of it, and if it doesn't work, you can get your money back. It's worked for thousands of people so far, and it could help you. Just go check it out, cankerboy.com. Please like and share this video if you liked it, and if this is your first time here, please check out some of my other videos. I talk about random topics like this on Thursdays, sciencey stuff and mind-blow type things on Mondays, and if you like those, please do subscribe. You'll be the first ones to see the new ones. And with that, I bid you adieu. You guys go out and have an eye-opening week, and I'll see you on Monday. Love you guys. Take care.